The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody to this 10-minute podcast where I'm going to share with you a few of my thoughts on planning and setting the school budget. To help you understand my role, I will take a few moments to describe the context of my school, as this will help you to understand the nature of my role. I'm a school business manager in a two-form entry primary academy where over 60% of the children have English as an additional language. The eligibility for free school meals is approximately 25%. There are 420 pupils and 80 staff, and other initiatives we are involved in are we are a lead school for Teaching School Alliance, and we're also a national support school, as well as being a provider of school-based initial teacher training, which is known as a SCIT. So as you can imagine, the role and responsibilities are very varied. This week I presented the budget for the 16-17 academic year to the full governing body in order for it to be approved. Thankfully, it was approved as the budget forecast has to be submitted to the DFE by the 31st of July. I just thought I would take a few moments to tell you how I approached the budget setting cycle in order to arrive at an approved budget. So at the end of last September, the senior management team we met to agree the Academy's development plan for that academic year. This plan details the aims and objectives to be achieved by the end of the following July. It details all of the Ofsted headings and sets out objectives to be achieved for each one. It always amazes me that objectives with cost implications can be included in the plan, as the budget for that academic year has already been approved and the budget year has already started. We're an academy, so our financial year starts the 1st of September. So, for example, one area that was mentioned as needing to be approved was the Year 1 teaching accommodation needed to be improved. All of the resources were dated. Fixtures and fittings were tired and shabby, and generally the whole area needed to be refreshed. So it was agreed that £5,000 would be spent on that year group. Having got this objective in the Academy Development Plan, and when the plan is finalised, it is distributed to the trustees. So the pressure is on for the senior leadership team to ensure that all objectives are achieved by the end of the year. As you can imagine, I get a request at the end of September for £5,000 to be spent on year 1, yet the budget has already been approved the previous July when I had no knowledge of this project. So to me, it seems like the Academy Development Plan should be prepared before the budget is put together, so that all the objectives detailed in the plan can be costed and included in the budget. But the reality of this happening in my school is that it won't, as other senior leaders in April and May, which are the months when it would be needed to be put together, are all focusing their efforts on the current cohorts trying to raise attainment for either the end of key stage SATs or the end of year assessments. So my role as a business manager is to recognise that teaching staff have different priorities to me and will always focus on the needs of pupils first. Therefore, when I put together the budget, I always make an allowance for a significant amount of money to be included in the alterations and improvements heading. So at the time the budget is set, I never know what this money will be spent on, but at least the funds will be available when required. So in March, I begin the process of collating the information I need to prepare the budget. I write to all the budget holders and ask them if they have any special requests for additional funds in the next academic year. Perhaps they may have new initiatives planned that I need to be aware of. So for example, Forest Schools is a new initiative where children learn outside key skills that will help to equip them with the challenges that life will throw at them. The costs associated with this are the training of staff to be qualified to deliver the Forest School programme, staff costs for the actual delivery of the programme itself, and then resources are required as well. So if I hadn't emailed the relevant staff, I would never have been aware of this initiative until the invoice arrived on my desk for the CPD training required, or an overtime claim for the additional hours worked by the staff. It might just be specific to my school, But I do find that I very often am the last person to be told what is going on. So my strategy for overcoming this and not being caught out, as it were, is to be very proactive, to ask and ask again. So armed with any responses to my emails, I am then in a position to look at expenditure for the year ahead. As a maintained school, I used to have to use a very basic Excel-based budgeting file, but as an academy we were unable to continue to use this as it was provided by the local authority. So initially I was horrified at having to find a suitable replacement, but I looked at various products, and by really understanding what it was I needed, I managed to find some fantastic software which easily takes the information I enter and works out a 5-year plan. It produces reports and graphs and key performance indicators. The only thing I need to do is to enter the correct information. So by April, the Education Funding Agency has announced what the delegated and devolved funding will be for the year ahead. So I am then able to enter accurate figures for income. The issue I have relates to the other income streams. As a national support school, we support other schools requiring school improvement packages, but I am having to budget for income from these schools, which in April, nobody knows which school the income will be generated from. We can get approached at any time during the year for short assignments or full year leading a school. So as you can imagine, the income generated fluctuates widely. For budget purposes, I estimate how much income we need to earn based on the staffing capacity we have to be deployed on these assignments. You can imagine what our accounts look like if we do not get offered the support work, yet still have the leadership scale salaries to pay for these staff. So it is a constant balancing act to get this right. Pupil premium and universal free school meals are other government and income streams, and I use strategies to try and ensure the income we can generate from these streams is maximised. So for example, pupil premium is based on the January census. So during December, when parents attend the Christmas concerts, I ensure we have flyers on seats or posters on entrance doors asking them if they think they may be eligible for free school meals. By taking a proactive approach at that time of year, we may get a few more recorded on the census than we would have done if I had taken no action. It took a couple of years for me to understand all the different funding streams, whether they are delegated, devolved, revenue or capital, but now being comfortable with these income streams, I try and focus on the formulae behind the funding. So for example, the fairer funding formula was introduced last year, and the weightings of deprivation have really changed in the area where my school is. The weightings for deprivation are decided by the local schools forum. This is a group of senior local leaders who represent all schools, and they meet to decide the fairest formula to distribute funding across all schools. It has become apparent that primary academies are in the minority, which I think is due to the fact that in my school's area there are not many of us. This is something the principal and trustees are now aware of and working with other primary academy leaders to try and ensure we do get fairly represented. So having collated all of the figures and estimated as accurately as possible, I then need to seek approval from the Board of Trustees. I initially present the budget to the Finance Committee members who work through each of the budget lines, questioning my assumptions and challenging my reasons for suggesting some of the figures. And after some detailed discussion, we usually reach the stage when the budget is ready to be presented to the full board for approval. No sooner has the budget been approved than I need to ensure I am working within 2 financial years. One, I am preparing for the end of the financial year, and the other I am preparing for the start, ensuring that the approved budget is entered into the system correctly, allocated to cost centres correctly, and then communicated to the budget holders. It is a cyclical process when one year informs the decisions made for the next. After a few years of doing the job, you might think it could get boring, But with the policy changes to finance, fairer funding changing the amounts we receive, and senior leaders with varying amounts of financial knowledge changing from one year to the next, there is no chance that the job will get boring. I hope you found this podcast interesting. Thank you for listening.